Hello my friends, Late Boy Scout here, and welcome to my review of the Ruger 2245 Mark II and Mark III. This is kind of a combined review. Really just a review of the type, the 2245. I've got two examples of it here because I own two examples of it. The Mark III, as I said, and the Mark II. The Mark III will be leaving soon because, frankly, I like the Mark II better. But while I have it, I want to bust out a review on the two of them and talk about some of the similarities, some of the differences, do a little comparing. I apologize in advance for not giving you extreme detail on weight, ballistics, yada, yada, yada. Here, I'm going to give you some great impressions of what I think these guns are good for, why I think you ought to own one for sure. Before we do that, safety check, satisfied that it's unloaded? I am. Satisfied that this one's unloaded? I am. So, the Ruger 2245. Man, what a great gun. I just love both of these guns, honestly, and I've had a really hard time kind of parting with this one. This is the first one that I bought, and I've enjoyed it immensely. My wife loves it. My kids have shot it. It's a terrific gun. It's very ergonomic. Feels great in hand. It's designed to have the same angle of grip as the 1911 and a lot of the same controls. The eject, okay, magazine eject is right there, slide release is right there, safety right there, all in the same place as your 1911, and that's awesome. Okay, so it's a great training gun for any 1911. Same goes, all those same features are on the 2245 Mark II, by the way. In addition to being a great training gun, these are just incredibly fun plinking guns, recreational firearms. And that's really one of the key things that I have got to have with guns that I buy. If it's not going to be fun to shoot, I don't really want to own it. You know, it's got to fill at least a couple roles. I think I follow after Dave Canterbury from Wilderness Outfitters, who talks about how things have got to have a couple different uses in order to be valuable. And that's more in a survival role. However, in a tactical role, I feel the same way. Guns have got to have a couple different uses in order to be useful and meaningful and valuable to me. The 2245 has that in spades. It's a great training gun. It's a great recreational gun. By the way, I love combining those two things into something that I call rec prep or recreation preparation. Training and recreation, training and fun. Put those things together as often as possible to just, you know, enjoy the training that you do. So why is it such a great training gun? In addition to the fact that it's got the same controls as any 45, any 1911 that is, it's very, very cheap to shoot. Any 45, as you know, costs a fair amount of money, a fair chunk of change to go plinking with. Get the same controls, get a lot of the same feel, and you're shooting 22 caliber ammunition, pennies. Okay, you're throwing pennies downrange. That's awesome. That is sweet. I love that fact. So, great training gun. Not just for 1911s though. I personally don't own a 1911 right now. In the future, perhaps, but right now I don't use these to simulate a 1911. I use it in place of a Glock, a 9mm Glock. And yeah, the controls are a little different. There is a safety, whereas there isn't one on a Glock. You know, things are slightly different. Obviously, you cannot rack the slide like you would on a Glock, and certain bits of muscle memory that you want to have and you want to maintain in your training for defensive handgun training, and so forth. They will not be present in the 2245. However, enough of that ergonomics, enough of those movements are present that it's a fantastic and very valuable training gun, especially when it comes to drills, okay, where you don't need to do malfunction drills necessarily. You know, do that with your actual gun, but just shooting drills and getting on target, presentation drills, after action drills, shooting with movement, getting off the X, all those good things that are very important for defensive handgun training. You can do all that super cheap with a 2245. So I think I've established why this gun is so valuable, not just for fun, but also for training. And you really ought to have one for both of those reasons if you're into guns, if you do a fair amount of shooting. get yourself a 2245 and enjoy it. Which 2245 are you going to get? Well, the 2245 Mark II is not available anymore for sale, not new. You're going to have to find this on the secondary market. That's where I found it. What you'll get instead, if you don't get the Mark II, is the Mark III. And it's a perfectly good gun too. There's a couple reasons why I don't like the Mark III as much as I like the Mark II. One, drop-free magazines. This is something that I don't know why Ruger did this, but the magazines do not drop free from the 2245 Mark III. Yeah, they don't. Here's one of the magazines. Pop it in there and just demonstrate. Okay, it comes out that far, and that's it. Can you modify the gun and make it come out the rest of the way? Probably. I'm not really into doing that. I try not to modify my guns. Holsters, perhaps, sometimes, but not guns, really. So you can maybe fix that and get rid of that magazine disconnect, is what it's called, that prevents that from working in that way. Or you can just live with it. Just live with the fact that it pops out a little bit and, you know, train with it anyway. By the way, magazine disconnect, what that really means, you know, the fact that it doesn't drop free is just a byproduct of the magazine disconnect. And what that is, if we can get this loaded up, when you dry fire it, on safe? Yeah, we're on safe. There's a dry fire, okay? Now, if we were to pop the magazine and do the same thing, and it's off safe, okay, it will not fire without a magazine in it. That's what a magazine disconnect is. And a byproduct of that safety feature, or, you know, babysitting feature, is that the magazines do not drop free, okay? So that's just something you're going to have to live with if you look for a Mark III. Again, you're probably going to have to, because the Mark IIs are going to be kind of hard to come by. That said, which Mark III are you going to buy? There's several. There's a long list of the types of Mark IIIs you can buy. You can get it in various barrel sizes, barrel lengths, barrel types. You can get fluted barrels. You can get slab-sided barrels. You can get the 4-inch barrel, the 5.5-inch barrel, which is what we have here. You know, stainless steel or blued. Yeah, you can get different grip panels. You can get ones that have different grip panels, or the ability to swap out grip panels. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I believe you can swap out any standard 1911 grip and put that on there. That's pretty sweet. This one, I didn't go for that. I went for the absolute bare bones basic version of the gun, the bull-barreled 5.5-inch standard handled one that doesn't have, you know, replaceable grips. Now, that's fine, and it's a perfectly good gun in this configuration. You're going to get a lot of good training with it and a lot of fun with this gun. In addition to that, let me point out one more thing before I forget about it. A great feature of this Mark III is that you see these screws up here? If you take those out, you can actually, I guess you would remove this sight here, the rear sight. You can actually put a rail on top of here for either some kind of tactical red dot or any other sort of scope or other sight. So that's a really neat feature. And that's something that just comes standard on any Mark III. So if you really want that option to change your sights, add something special on top of there, the Mark III is going to be the way to go. If you don't care about that, I really just kind of like using this with standard sights. It's a handgun. You know, I don't really want to put a red dot on there. I don't see any training use for that. It's definitely got some fun recreation purposes, but again, I don't feel like it's got a training purpose, so I wouldn't do that. In addition, there's, like I said, a lot of different variations of the Mark III that you can get. So just go to Ruger's website, check out what they've got right now. And, I don't know, look on the secondary market. You'll probably find a lot of other variations and a lot of distributor-exclusive versions of it that will really turn you on and get you going. And that's cool. So, which Mark III are you going to get? Man, that's up to you. You're just going to have to look at what's available and make some decisions based on what you really dig and what you can afford. Because, yes, they go up in price. They change in price depending on the model, depending on what you want to get, the features you want to get. Let's talk a little bit more about the 2245 Mark II, why I have chosen to keep this one over the Mark III. And let's just get one more thing out of the way, guys. Yes, I'm keeping only one, not both of them. You probably would keep both of them, and that's great. I'm only keeping one because they fill the exact same role. I don't need two guns that do the same thing. Okay, I'm not that big of a collector. I really just want to have guns that fill roles. So let's talk about the Mark II. Why do I like the Mark II so much? Well, the look is a little bit more classic, a little bit cooler in my view. The fact that it's got the Ruger logo on there, that's pretty cool. You know, a lot of other little features. The stainless steel, barrel is a big upside for me. I like that. Ergonomically, it's a little better because the grip is a little bit fatter, a little bit wider. A little bit more similar to my Glock, which is my actual gun, my 9mm gun. So it's a little better as a training replacement. The weight on it, well, I didn't mention the weight at all for the Mark III. This standard version is around 33 ounces, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe the Mark II here is heavier. It's very close. It's very close. I think it's only a variance of a couple ounces, if that. But I'm pretty sure that this one is a little bit heavier. Bulkier in hand for sure, and I like that. I like that it's a little bit bulkier in hand, and I've told you why. More reminiscent of my Glock. If I were to get the more expensive version of this 2245 Mark III, again, I could swap out those grip panels and have that fat-handled version, no problem. Let's look at, by the way, I'm not pointing at myself, and you're not going to get hurt right now either, so just calm down. If we look at the grip panels, or if we look at the grips in general, we see that the Mark II is a little bit fatter all around than the Mark III. And that's perfectly fine. Not a problem with that. The sights are a little different too. Only slightly. As you can see, the Mark III, the blade is not quite as long. The front sight blade is not quite as long as it is on the Mark II. Not a problem. Really doesn't make a difference to me. Also, the width of that sight on the Mark II is a little bit wider. The base is a little bit wider than on the Mark III. Again, no practical difference, just a slight design difference. The rear sights, basically the same. Pretty much identical, near as I can tell. Fully adjustable for windage and elevation, making it really easy to dial in. Not that they're not accurate right out of the box. In my experience, they are. They're quite accurate and extremely fun to shoot. By the way, we'll talk briefly about your sight picture. Sight alignment, of course, means that you get your sights aligned like so and hold them as you pull your trigger. But sight picture means where are you going to hold that sight on? Where's your target going to be in relation to those sights? Well, let's use this magazine here as an example. Let's say that bead right there is our target. Okay, so here is how you would line up this sight. And it's kind of hard to see, but what you would basically do is put your target just above that front sight. Okay, and that's exactly how you want to hold in order to get on target. If you put it right on top of it, you're going to be shooting high. I don't know how that works out, but trust me, that's how it is. That's how Ruger recommends it, and that's how I recommend it too if you want to stay on target. Okay, just a little pointer there. Here's a big tip, something to note. If you own a Mark II and you can only find Mark III magazines, guess what? They're going to work. I've swapped these magazines back and forth. These are Mark III magazines. And you know what? Guess what? Those drop free actually. So that's really cool. The Mark III magazines work just fine in the Mark II. No failures that I've found. And the Mark II magazines work just fine in the Mark III. Once again, no failures that I've found. However, because of that magazine disconnect, they don't drop free. So, keep that in mind and know that you can go shopping for either one of the magazines, whether it's a Mark III or Mark II, and you'll be able to use them interchangeably with the gun that you have. Some differences between the magazines. One big difference, you'll see that knob right here that you pull down on to load your magazine, and that's, by the way, the best way to do it, is to sort of pull down on this as you feed your rounds in like so. Just kind of pull it down and feed those rounds in quickly. It's a really nice feature, how it assists you in getting those rounds in there and makes it a little bit easier, a little bit faster than having to manually push them down, you know, as you have to do with virtually every other magazine that you own. It's a really nice feature, and I really appreciate that Ruger did that. Slight difference between those two buttons. On the Mark III, it's actually got some texture to it. Does that make a difference? Do I prefer one over the other? I don't know. It's really hard to say. They work just as well. I almost prefer the Mark II without any kind of knurling on it, because it is a little bit rounded there. It's just a little bit more ergonomic and easy to use, more comfortable to use. However, they both work perfectly fine. On the Mark III, you see there's this little cutout here, okay, with the spring exposed. I don't know exactly what that does. Again, the Mark II magazine doesn't have that, and it works just fine in the gun. So I don't understand the purpose of that. I guess I don't really care either. I do really like the 5.5-inch barrel on these guns. However, if I were to do something different, make a different choice in my purchase, I would maybe go with a 4-inch one. In fact, maybe sometime down the road, since I'm going to be hanging on to this one, if I look for another 2245 in the future, perhaps I'll get a 4-inch version. Have a little variation there. I would like to talk about takedown and cleaning of these guns. However, pretty much every time I've done it, I just fight my way through it, honestly. So get on Google or get on here on YouTube and search around for Ruger 2245 disassembly, reassembly, or cleaning, and so forth, and you'll understand how that's done. It's a simple matter of, well, not such a simple matter all the time, but the way it starts off is by pulling this down, pulling that up, yanking that out, and then it kind of goes from there. It gets a little hectic putting it back together sometimes. But, you know, once again, that's one of the reasons I'm not going to demonstrate it for you, because I've only been able to fight my way through it each time. Never really kind of did it smoothly. Even so, I've done it well enough to get both of these guns spick and span, beautifully clean. And so, you know, it can be done. Just, you may have to fight your way through it. Another little difference between the two guns is this charging area, these two blades on either side of the charging handle. Charging handle? Well, we'll call it that, I guess. On the Mark II, it's a little bit wider than on the Mark III. Does one work better than the other? I really haven't found that one is, doesn't work well. I think they both work just fine. I actually kind of prefer the Mark II here because it is a little bit wider, easier to grab hold of. And while this one is more sort of tapered, kind of terraced, it also works very, very well. They just wanted to slim it down, I think, maybe save a little weight, which they did. But, I still kind of like the 2245 Mark II over the Mark III in that area as well. Accuracy. I haven't really found any difference in accuracy between these two guns, between the two models. I wouldn't expect that either. I mean, Ruger has done a pretty good job staying very high quality with every version of the 2245, in my experience and to my knowledge. So I don't think that one gun is going to be more accurate than the other. And if it were, you can always just adjust the sights and you're back on target. Overall, guys, the 2245 has been one of my favorite guns to shoot. Maybe my absolute favorite gun to shoot. With the low cost of 22 caliber ammunition and just the joy of shooting something that's a low recoil and easy to get on target with. Makes it so rewarding, so much fun. You're so glad you got it out, and did some shooting with it every time you do it. So that's the main reason, just the joy, the satisfaction you're going to have from a gun like this. That's the main reason why I recommend it to you and tell you you've got to get yourself a 2245 in your gun collection. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'm the Late Boy Scout. We'll see you on the next one.